Yeah, and that worldview has been developed by our culture, oftentimes through osmosis. We don't even question it. What's come as a result of these statements that she's making, it's important for Christians to see, I think, that indicative of these kinds of statements and the statements of these children is there is a worldview at the bottom of this. And so the worldview that she's articulating, obviously we've talked about personhood before, right, where you have two-story view of reality. The essential self is the immaterial, and then the body is the lower story, less valuable, and so the body gets denigrated in that. And then when you apply that to abortion, you can get rid of a baby's body because it's not its true self. It's just the body. It's a baby, but it's not a human being, right? So we know that foundation. But more importantly, too, more specifically, what she's articulating is something that's called social contract theory. And that is this idea. Let me give you the modern expression so you understand it. My womb is being invaded by a fetus. That's how it sounds in the modern expression. Where it comes from is the Enlightenment scientific revolution. What people started doing was starting to apply Newtonian physics and all of the scientific concepts to the status of relationships. So people said, I wonder what a world would look like in which before religion, before tradition, before societal norms, before all these conventions, what would relationships have looked like with human beings? Well, they would have been just purely contractual. A human being couldn't enter a relationship with another human being unless they had their consent first. That's where this comes from. And then the modern day expression brought over is that in Newtonian physics is essentially atheistic, like you said, where you have a universe, a cosmos with indifferent, unconnected atoms that are just banging into each other, right? It's atheistic, and it essentially is what it is. And so you have the contract view of the relationship that says, hey, I get to dictate the terms of this relationship. It's not pre-decided for me by God. It's not the covenantal status. It's not the covenantal arrangement, which is what marriage is, and as a result, the product of that union, children. It's a contractual relationship. So if I didn't agree to this, if I don't agree to God's standards of life, the way he says things are, and the functions of my body, this fetus is an invader in my womb, and I have every right to protect myself against it. That's the worldview that's being articulated right now. Social contract theory and all of what we know to be true about the Bible and the biblical worldview and the covenantal arrangement God has given us is that God has determined the course of our relationships, and the basis for relationship is in his very being, in his triune nature, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He gives us marriage as an expression of that, and then the result of children. So it's very important that we talk about these things because you already did the internal critique on it. She talked about at the beginning, didn't want to have a baby. All the worldview just collapses when she's talking about engaging in the sexual act, separating it from its procreative function, making it recreational, right? But she consented to this relationship, and now on the back end, of the other side of her mouth, she's saying, I didn't consent to this baby being in here. I feel like if I'm forced to create life, I've lost the right to my own life. Someone's forcing this on me. It's not the contract I signed up for.
Right.
That's what Christians need to understand about this worldview. It's atheistic to the core. It's being given new robes and new garbs, and it's just being regurgitated, and it's being absorbed by our youth. And you'll see that if we get to it in the video where the child just starts talking about, well, I don't feel like the baby is really human. It's more like a sea cucumber. It's not capable of complex thought. Well, neither is the person in the coma.
That's right.
Right? Neither is the husband that's sleeping and the wife that stabs him in his sleep.
That's right.
Right? So if you flesh it out, if you take it to its logical end, its implication, if you fully flesh it out, it collapses on itself. And that's what we need to be engaged in. As the Apostle Paul says, the warfare is not physical. We wage war in the spiritual realm, casting down lofty arguments and everything that sets itself up against the knowledge of God.
That's right.